what's up? My name is Dom. Welcome back to my channel. If you're new to my channel, I typically make bookish content, movie content, and anything else in between because I like to do whatever I want on this channel, and today is going to be movie content. For today's video, we're going to go over everything I watched in the month of May, and I'm just going to jump right into it because we have 17 movies and 3 TV shows to discuss. So the first movie I watched in May is Snoopy's Reunion, which is a Charlie Brown special that came out in 1991. If you're new to this channel, I am trying to watch all the Charlie Brown specials in the year of 2025. This one specifically is Snoopy focused, as you can guess by the title. And in this one, he misses all of his siblings, so Charlie Brown plans a day where they can all get together. I'm gonna say right off the bat, this is one of my favorite movies of the year so far. I gave this one a perfect score just because of the vibes. I love Snoopy. I think he's hilarious. I love that he could be so funny without, saying a word like a Charlie Chaplin character. And I love that we got to meet all of his siblings, not only in the present day, but we also do see a bunch of flashbacks. We do get to meet Charlie Brown, meet baby Snoopy for the first time, and I am obsessed with that scene. I think it is so precious. And I just spent the entire time giggling and kicking my feet in the air, so I gave this 5 out of 5 stars. Then the next movie is actually a rewatch, and it's E.T. So this is about an alien who was left behind on Earth and he is taken in by a young boy. I decided to watch this because near the end of April, I watched the movie The Legend of Ochi, and I remember saying in my review, this would have done numbers in the 80s, because there's something about 80s movies where it's a kid that makes friends with some kind of creature. And it's nothing like E.T. though, minus that description, but it still gave me E.T. vibes, so I was like, why not rewatch this? And this movie is still hilarious. It still has an amazing score. I am still impressed with Elliot's acting. I do think Henry Thomas was an amazing child actor. Not only is it hilarious, it's just so heartwarming, and it's just so funny, my history with this movie. This movie used to scare the shit out of me when I was a young kid, and I'm talking like toddler age. That's when I first watched this, and it was the scene when E.T. and Elliot meet for the first time, so they're screaming, and then I started screaming and I ran out of the room. And for years, whenever my parents put this movie on, I would run out of the room or hide underneath a blanket because I was just so scared. And it took until I was a teenager to finally grow some balls and watch the movie, and now I absolutely adore this movie. I cannot watch the ending without crying. So again, this was a rewatch. It's so good. I think I rated this like between 4.5 stars. Then I watched another Charlie Brown special, and that is You're in Love, Charlie Brown, which came out in 1967. So this special is about our main character, Charlie Brown, who is hopelessly in love with a little red-haired girl, and all of his friends are trying to set him up to little avail. So if you're new to the world of Charlie Brown, part of the lore is that he has a major crush on a little red-haired girl. We don't know her name. We don't get to see her in a lot of specials. She's more so a reoccurring gag so that people, can make jokes about Charlie Brown. But this is where it all begins. And I thought this was adorable. I absolutely love seeing Charlie Brown in love because he's just, even though he's a child and I'm an adult, I do find him incredibly relatable. He loves her from afar, just like I crush on all my crushes from afar, and he has like crippling anxiety about this, and I feel that. I gave this one 4 out of 5 stars. Then yet again, I have another Charlie Brown special because I kind of binged them in the beginning of this month. There's No Time for Love, Charlie Brown, which came out in 1973. I went into this one thinking it was going to be along the realms of the little red-haired girl, but it has nothing to do with love. In this one, Charlie Brown, Peppermint Patty, and Marcy mistake a grocery store for a museum that they were meant to see for a field trip. This one I thought was just okay because I do like all 3 of these characters as individuals. I do like Peppermint Patty and Marcy as a duo. Marcy's kind of aloof. Peppermint Patty has that leadership quality to her, so I think they work really well together. It's also funny to me that Marcy was always calling her Sir just to piss her off. But for some reason, everyone as a trio felt really flat to me. You would think it would work because both Peppermint Patty and Marcy, especially Peppermint Patty, have a crush on Charlie Brown, so those are often the jokes, but they weren't really landing for me. And just the museum itself versus the grocery store they walk into, they were so different. And I feel like you have to be really, I don't know how to say this nicely, you just have, you just must not have your wits about you if you get these two things confused, because even the aloof character Marcy was like, hey, something is up. So you do need a lot of suspension of disbelief for it to work, and it didn't really work for me. I didn't give it a low rating because some of the jokes were funny, especially when Peppermint Patty and Marcy were on their own, and then when Lucy and Linus were their own duo in other scenes. So I did surprisingly give this 3.5 out of 5 stars. Then I watched the original Japanese live-action Death Note. This is based on the manga and the anime, both of which I have consumed. I actually vlogged my manga experience, so I will link that up above. This story is about a boy named Light Yagami who discovers a notebook and learns that if you write someone's name in, they die. So he takes it upon himself to kill off criminals and become god of the new world. It's been one of my favorite manga anime stories ever since I first watched the anime when I was 14, just because first of all, what kind of synopsis is that? Second, it was just so fascinating to me reading a story where the main character is actually a terrible person, because I feel like there's just misconception that protagonists have to be morally good people. And Light Yagami, you can argue he had good intentions, but it just fell off the wayside. And it's just such a fascinating psychological thriller. Like, we truly get to see the psychology of a killer in this. And I actually did react to this movie. It was up for a while, but then copyright blocked it from everything, and I just don't... Copyright on this website is driving me nuts, because there's actually been 4 movies total that I have edited and uploaded to this hell site, and yet the copyright just won't let up, and it is discouraging. So when YouTube blocked this one too, I just gave up. I didn't even bother fighting it. What I will say about this though, this is actually not the worst live action adaptation that I've seen. This is the first of 2 movies, so it ends around the whole like Naomi plot point, if you know, you know. And from the beginning to up until that plot point, this movie actually kept the majority of the major plot points. And it had a very intense opening. It's not as calm as the original anime, but when you're going into a movie, I understand why they made the choice they made. And the acting in this is actually not that bad. Lights is kind of funny just because his actor scrunches up his face a lot. He goes like this and he looks like a little baby. But the guy who plays L, his mannerisms are on point. One of my gripes though, this live action, and the Netflix live action did this too, it leaves out how egotistical Light is. Like, he's always been full of himself, and that's why his character development in this worked. And I actually don't like what they did with Naomi, and I say this in my vlog too and in a couple videos on this channel. I do feel like the end of her arc in the main story is out of character, and I believe I read somewhere that the authors accidentally made her too smart, so they had to get rid of her, because if they kept her, the story would have ended way too soon. And in this one, they somehow ruined it even more. It was just really bizarre. I don't know how to explain it without spoiling. And Light has a girlfriend in this movie, so she's an original character, and I just thought it was kind of weird because the Light in the original story would not have one. He was way too full of himself, and we saw with Misa that he would just treat them like garbage. And in this one he did too. He was treating her fine in the beginning, but by the end of the movie she really was just a catalyst that pushed the plot forward. He treated her like a tool, which is not necessarily, like, that aspect is not necessarily out of character. I just got confused from an adaptation standpoint why we had her and not Misa. So if you're a huge Misa fan, she does not have a lot of screen time in this. We don't really meet her until later in the movie, but they easily could have left out the girlfriend and have Misa take over like she does in the original manga, and the story would be the same. So overall, I did give this 3 out of 5 stars. Oh, and I do want to say Ryuk is absolutely horrifying to look at. We have come so far when it comes to CGI. Next, we have another Charlie Brown special. Like I said, I kind of unintentionally binged these, but it's Your Good Man, Charlie Brown, which came out in 1985. So this is actually an adaptation of the Broadway musical that came out around at that time. And it's just the Peanuts gang doing shenanigans and singing within short clips. There's not like an actual plot to this. In the original Broadway version, they are all played by adults, but in this one, it is kids singing. Plot-wise, this movie's fine. It just felt like an anthology movie, just a bunch of short clips put together. Snoopy sings, so we get to hear him have a voice, which is really bizarre, especially because I'm just so used to him being a Charlie Chaplin character. But the reason I couldn't really like this movie is because the singing in this is so annoying to listen to. Biggest culprit is that these are child singers singing songs that were made for adults. You're gonna have a lot of kids singing things that aren't in their vocal range. They're not trained like these Broadway actors were, and technically they may be fine. I'm gonna say that as a disclaimer just because I'm not as knowledgeable on music as others may be, but it was just so annoying for me to listen to, especially when they were singing in groups and those high-pitched voices. I swear to God, I feel like my ears were crinkling because it was so, even if I turned the volume down, it just felt loud. So I gave this only 2.5 out of 5 stars. But next is another Charlie Brown special that I actually did really enjoy, and this also made my top 10 films of the year, and it's Snoopy Presents To Mom and Dad With Love, which came out in 2022. So this one is actually one of the Apple TV Plus originals, hence why it says Snoopy Presents. In the Apple originals, I noticed Charlie Brown's name is no longer in the title, it's just Snoopy Presents. So that's the main way to know when it's a newer Charlie Brown special versus the older ones, because I guess Snoopy is just more popular with the kids these days. The synopsis of this one is that this is actually Peppermint Patty focused. So the kids are really excited because it's Mother's Day, which is when I watched this. I watched this on Mother's Day, and the kids are talking about gifts to buy their moms. Peppermint Patty is upset because she doesn't have a mom, so she feels really left out. But after talking it out with Marcy, she decides to buy a gift for her father. And right off the bat, the first thing I noticed in this was the art style, the type of animation. It's still 2D, but it's just so smooth. We've come so far. But not only that, I do appreciate, despite the fact that, you know, this was made in the 2020s as compared to the specials made 60 years ago, holy shit, they still keep those original gags. So like when a Peanuts gang member is screaming, they lift their head and it only shows their mouth. So they still do that. They still kind of have the effects, like if everyone's laughing, you'll see ha-ha on the screen, or when Woodstock is flying, you see the little swirls. So I love that they kept all those in. Then I also love that they added more to the background. If you watch those original specials, they never really have a lot going on in the background. It's mostly kids walking in a field of grass. And then if you see them walk into a building, that building is surrounded by a field of grass. Rarely ever do you see what someone's house looks like, because it's the side of the house. It takes up only half the screen, and then you only see like half their face pop up. But in this one, we get to actually see streets. We get to see the stores they go to, where they hang out. It feels like an actual town and not Charlie Brown living in the middle of nowhere, and it was cool to see these characters interact with said town. And I also just really loved the story too. It's sweet and simple. It teaches kids that, you know, not everyone has the same concept of a mom. When it comes to Peppermint Patty, I'm so used to her being used for comedic relief, and she had her moments in this, but at the same time, it was nice to see those scenes where she's venting to Marcy and just having her have that deeper introspection about herself. And not only did I love the scenes with Peppermint Patty, but Woodstock was a side plot in this too. So Woodstock's trying to find his mom, and I thought that was lovely. But there was one point in the special where I just teared up a bit, and then after that, the tears just never stopped. I think I spent the last like 5 to 10 minutes sobbing watching this, because it basically ends with Linus giving a monologue, and it's showing all the kids giving their moms, dads, whoever, their respective gifts, and I just thought it was so cute and beautiful and just a lovely tribute to Mother's Day. So I did give this 4.5 out of 5 stars. So for my next movie, I started my Wes Anderson journey. He is one of my many list of things to see on my phone. I have about 6 lists now because I completed his on my phone. I'm trying to get through all the Oscar Best Pictures. I was trying to get through all Wes Anderson, all Martin Scorsese, and each month I pick a list to focus on. So May was Wes Anderson. So I watched The Life Aquatic with Steve Zissou, and this is about an oceanographer who swears vengeance against the shark that killed his friend, and he is joined by a pregnant journalist and a man who he believes to be his son. So I definitely love this on a technical scale. I've always loved the bright colors of Wes Anderson's films. It's what always draws me in every time. And I love the set designs. Like, Wes Anderson clearly uses actual sets, and it makes you feel like you're watching a play, because sometimes these sets will move by themselves and we'll see the characters interact with them in order for them to do that. Wes Anderson loves symmetry in his frames, and it always tickles something in my brain. And there's a lot of dry humor in this. I feel like Wes Anderson is known for his dry humor. All the characters speak in a monotone and they just kind of say something bad shit. And most of the time it works. However, the story itself in this movie just didn't click with me for some reason. I liked most of the characters, but Steve, which is funny just because Wes Anderson doesn't really make his protagonists like good people. They kind of are, they're like charming assholes, as that's what I usually call them. Not necessarily likable, but there's something about them that makes you unable to look away. But there's something about Steve that I wasn't liking, and I am going to be honest, admittedly it just could be because he's played by Bill Murray, and I'm not a Bill Murray fan, so maybe if another actor stepped in, I would like this movie more. But I gave it 2.5 out of 5 stars. The next movie is another Wes Anderson, and that's the Darjeeling Limited. This is about 3 American brothers who set off on a train ride in India in order to reconnect. When it comes to this movie at a technical scale, all of my thoughts are the same as Steve Zissou, so I am not going to repeat myself. But I did like this story more. I found it to be charming despite our unlikable characters. I'm going to use the word charming a lot because I feel like that's what encompasses Wes Anderson's films for me. And it's so funny how the story is told because it's told in a way where, like, on the surface you think these brothers get along, but it's always the littlest things that show that they don't, and they are constantly in competition with each other. There's one example I'm thinking of, and it's the scene where they're trying to save the 3 kids, and one of them says, "I didn't save mine." It's sad, but it also makes you think, did they jump to the rescue for the right reasons? Because they were making fun of these kids beforehand, or did they see it as an opportunity to one-up each other? And I really did like watching these 3 brothers interact and learning about the world around them, so I gave this 4 out of 5 stars. So for my next movie, I went to the theaters to see this because it was near the end of May, and I hadn't used my AMC stubs yet. So I saw The Weeknd's new movie, Hurry Up Tomorrow, because why the hell not? And this is about a troubled musician who is enraptured by this weird girl who causes his life to descend into chaos. Now, disclaimer, am I a Weeknd fan? Well, I'm a casual fan. I actually do really enjoy his music. I just don't know if I'd ever be able to go to a concert, and I don't care enough to like look into his life. So I didn't go into this to hate him. And I feel like I have to give that disclaimer because if you see the reviews of this movie got panned. Movie goers do not like this movie. It seems the only people who did are fans of The Weeknd, and they're trying to tell us, like, those who get it. Like, if we didn't like this, we just don't understand him. Take that as you will, but I am going to review this movie as its own thing, as someone who likes movies. Quite frankly, I thought this was crap and just one big ego trip on The Weeknd's part. A lot of people on Letterboxd seem to like the visuals of this movie. Quite frankly, I hated them. I thought they were overstimulating. If you are sensitive to bright strobe lights that are constantly blinking in and out, this movie is not for you. It is seizure-inducing. I am not typically sensitive to this stuff, but even I had to close my eyes a few times, especially in the beginning. It was just way too bright, way too flashy. I was getting a migraine watching this. I did not like the scenes where the camera is just spinning in a circle, and I understand why these choices were made. Like the strobe lights, that was all made for discomfort because the Weeknd's character, he gets on stage, he's trembling and he's sweating. He is clearly uncomfortable, and because he's uncomfortable, we have to be uncomfortable. Those spinning scenes, I get it. His life is descending, his life is crumbling, and we're supposed to be sad. However, as a movie goer, as an audience member, when I'm watching a movie, I don't want to have a seizure. I don't want to puke while I'm watching a movie because those spinning scenes actually made me nauseous. I feel like there's a way to do all that without negatively affecting your audience. Like, I've seen strobe lights used in movies before that just weren't as bad as this. And when it comes to an auditory sense, like, yes, I love the songs in this movie. The music's a banger. But I want to know who did the sound engineering because it is loud. I was willing to blame my specific theater at first because my specific theater does tend to be very loud, but when comparing it to other movies that I ended up seeing later in the month, I was like, no, they're not that loud. Never has a movie ever made me want to cover up my ears the way this one did. Again, not because the music's bad. I actually love the music in this, and it's like the one good thing I have to say about it, but it's because my ears were physically hurting watching this. Barry Keoghan's character took me right out of this whenever he was on screen. I did not like that character. I know playing a weird little guy is his thing, but in this one he's not a weird little guy, he's just an annoying little guy. It was the way he was speaking. It felt so forced to me. Like the constant calling him a bro and just using American slang because he kept his Irish accent. He even says he came from Ireland. So it was just, so it's like me living in Philadelphia saying the word John even though I grew up in Chicago. You can even hear that doesn't sound natural coming out of my mouth. And like, I don't know. I know you're supposed to have a suspension of disbelief because it's fictional and blah, 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 but at some point, like, and it's probably because, too, Barry Keoghan couldn't really act in this movie, which is so weird because I've seen him in other movies where he does a fantastic job. But in this one, he was kind of shit. And I do want to talk about the plot of this movie. A lot of reviews say there isn't one, and I do disagree with that. To me, there is a plot. It's just, I think the execution was just kind of crap. The plot is the tortured artist trope. Like, this guy is struggling with his fame, and he's trying to come to terms with it. However, it's extremely on the nose. That's why I'm kind of shocked so many reviews are like, you guys just don't get it. Like, no, I didn't even read the synopsis going into this movie, but I immediately got that. Not to mention, there is literally a scene in this movie, it's 10 minutes long, and it's just Jenna Ortega listening to The Weeknd's music, dancing to it, and telling the audience what each song is about while The Weeknd is tied to a bed in tears. You know what also doesn't help? It doesn't help that our main actor, who wrote the script about himself, can't fucking act. It was just the over-exaggerated body movements, the body mannerism, his facial expressions, but not only that, like, the voice coming out of his mouth was not matching the blank stare that was in his eyes throughout the whole movie. So I wasn't convinced he was feeling the way he was telling me he was feeling. And Jenna Ortega has been acting forever, and you could tell she's had the proper training because this girl was acting circles around him, and all she did in this movie was cry. And this also just feels like one way too long music video. I don't know if it was the pacing, the acting, all of the above, but I was falling asleep in the theater. So this was also just incredibly boring on top of everything else I said. It never has a movie literally made me fall asleep, especially when it's loud like that and visually overstimulating. That's actually kind of impressive. I guess in the end you can argue this movie is more about vibes than plot, but I was just, no matter what you tell me, I was just not vibing with this. I gave this 1.5 out of 5 stars. The next movie I watched is Death Note 2: The Last Name. So this is live action 2 of the main story. I actually reacted to this, but because of what happened with the first movie, I did not bother editing this together. So all that footage is deleted. You will never see it, but I will still talk about it. So this takes place around the time Light and Misa officially start working together up until Light's demise, with a lot skipped. And I will say I had a harder time with this one. A huge chunk of the manga is missing because I guess maybe time, and L is a loved character, and apparently when the manga was coming out, a lot of people were pissed off about L's fate. So it feels like this movie's trying to remedy that. But that means a lot of characters are either left out or their entire characterization was changed. For example, the Yoshida Productions, that plot line is still in this, but it's not the Yoshida Productions, it's Kiyomi. And yes, she's still a Kira worshiper in this, like she was in the original story, but just, it's a totally different person. They just borrowed the name for recognition's sake, and Nier and Mello are not going to be in this at all. So as an adaptation, this was just kind of like a lot, just the jumping around they did. Having said that though, as its own movie, if you had only watched the first one and this one and had never read the manga or seen the anime, I do think it's still comprehensible. It still connects the dots well. Like, given the changes, the ending makes a lot of sense, and quite frankly, the way this movie did it, it does give L more dignity. But I really don't like how they handled Misa in this either. Like, as a character in this, she feels pretty useless, and like they could have just gotten rid of her as a whole. I got bored. Isn't that bad? Like, the original story did not bore me at all. So, and also Rem was horrifying to look at just because the way CGI was back in the day. So I gave this only 2.5 out of 5 stars. Then the next movie I watched is another Wes Anderson, and it's Moonrise Kingdom. And this is about two 12-year-olds that fall in love and run away together. On a technical scale, I feel the same way as the other Anderson movies. So again, I am not repeating myself. However, I will say I didn't find the dry humor as funny in this one. And just like with Steve Zissou, this is another story that just did not click with me. I did not care about our two main characters, and for no particular reason, I just think this is when the Wes Anderson dry humor started to grate on me. And I actually stopped paying attention at one point. So I gave this 2.5 out of 5 stars. Higher than you would expect, but it's just because the way this movie looked on a technical scale, I did like it. I couldn't rate it too low. That being said, I did watch the Grand Budapest Hotel, which is like his what is that word? Magnum opus, I guess, because it was nominated for Best Picture, and I did like this one better. This is about a legendary concierge at a hotel who takes on a trusted prodigy, and it's a lot of shenanigans in this movie. The story involves theft, there's a family fortune, and what else? The upheavals of Europe, because what else would this be about? And this is a fun one. This is one I feel like doesn't take itself too seriously like the others do. Wes Anderson doesn't, I don't think, takes himself too seriously, but it is pretty fun. It's also a lot more colorful than other Anderson movies. I really love the pastels in this. And once again, just very charming characters, because he knows even if they're terrible people or if they're good people, they're always charming in some way. But in this movie's case, I think I had more fun watching them interact with their setting rather than push the story itself along, because the story kind of started getting boring, but like it just felt like they were running through a dollhouse, and I thought I loved looking at it. But as much as I liked this movie compared to Moonrise Kingdom, I don't love it as much as others. Like, I know this got a lot of high ratings, but for me it's just kind of middle in the road. Watching this movie is when I started to realize that if you binge Wes Anderson's movies, they are going to start feeling stale, because it has the same type of humor, has the same visuals, the bright colors, and the symmetry. And it does get old because it feels like you're watching the same characters over and over again, and it feels like there's nothing to the story. If they feel very surface level. But I will say, I'm gonna be a basic bitch here. I read a comment on Reddit recently that's purposeful. The comment was, the style is the substance. Like, Wes Anderson wants you to pay more attention to the visuals than the story itself. That's what he's truly showing off. A lot of people on Reddit are repeating that, so I'm going to be another person who does that, because I do think it just encapsulates what we're feeling pretty well. But overall, I gave this movie 3.5 out of 5 stars. So next I watched a movie that I actually despise. This is one of my bottom 3 movies of the year, and that is Fear Street Prom Queen. So this is a prequel to the Fear Street trilogy, which I actually had a lot of fun with. And this takes place in the 1980s. This is supposed to be like an 80s slasher. Someone is killing all the prom queen candidates. And this was just really bad. It doesn't feel like a Fear Street movie. It had completely different vibes. You could very much tell different writers and a different director were involved. There was like maybe one mention of the town in order to connect the movies, but otherwise this very much felt like it just could have been its own thing. And I hate to break it to some of y'all, but there are no lesbians in this, and I know that was a huge selling point for the original trilogy. So first off, the dialogue in this was absolutely terrible. They spoke in ways humans don't normally speak in. Just really cringy. A lot of the characters would try to say things that made them sound cool or profound, but they just ended up sounding corny as hell. I understand some of it was intentional, but then you got characters who were trying to sound evil and cool, and they just ended up sounding like a Looney Tunes character. There is a dance scene, because I feel like you can't have a prom movie without a dance scene, and it took me right out of the story. That's one of those movies where you have the queen of the school, and then you have the punching bag, and everyone's punching the punching bag, but there's a turning point in the movie where she seems better than the queen, and that's what this dance scene represents. So, you know, the punching bag is actually really good at dancing, whereas you have the queen of the school, she's really bad at it. And when it comes to the person who was bad at it, they did a great job hiring someone who can't dance to save their life. But the punching bag, our main character who's supposed to be a good dancer, wasn't a good dancer. She was offbeat. Her moves were boring. I was kind of shocked that people were cheering her on. Like, even I could fucking do that. How are you getting votes now with these moves? It was just really weird and cringy to watch. Also, no one in this movie can act, especially the bully, who's one of the main characters. If you can't act, girl, you are taking me right out of this fucking story. What's going on here? To everyone else's credit, they feel like they at least tried, even if it did come off as very Disney Channel. But the girl who plays the bully was the worst one. Like, her delivery was just awful. Her mannerisms were hilarious when they weren't supposed to be. Like, her facial and vocal mannerisms just weren't matching the words coming out of her mouth. In her defense, she was given awful material, but it's like, girl, at least do what everyone else is doing and at least try. And this actress that I'm currently criticizing, she was nominated for a Tony. So I'm gonna hope for her sake it's like a writers and director issue and she was just given an awful script and maybe she's good in other things. And actually, now that I think about it, the fact she was nominated for a play, her acting kind of makes sense, because that's what it feels like. She's over exaggerating, like not realizing a camera's in her face so we can now see her, whereas when you're on stage in a play, you do need to over-exaggerate so the person all the way in the back of the theater can see you. So I think she has a lot of work to do in order to make that proper transition. The writing itself, I mentioned a few times, is terrible, but it did leave a lot to be desired. It's predictable. You would think there's more to certain characters, the way they would interact with each other, and just till suddenly there weren't. Like our bully and one of her friends, they had a little interaction where I'm like, ooh, you have a history, and then you never see the two interact, so we never get that background info, and I'm like, what was the point of that? And I know these are based on books, so it feels like things are happening in this movie because they have to, since they happened in the book. But in the books, I've never read the book, but maybe in the book we get those like smaller in-between scenes so that these actions make sense. The actions aren't really making sense in the movie. And also, this movie is boring. How do you make an 80s slasher boring? And my biggest gripe with this movie, though, is that, again, 80s. It's an 80s slasher, and yet nobody looks like they're from the 80s. They attempted with the clothes, but it's the hair and makeup. They all look like they've seen a fucking iPhone before. They're wearing these 80s prom dresses with 2024 eyebrows, a 2022 hairstyle. And I'm noticing this trend in modern made historical movies and historical movies made in the 2020s. I just don't understand why people of these movies are so afraid to make their actors look like they're from the decade they're trying to depict. If you want me to feel like I'm watching a movie from a certain era, you have to make the actors look like they're from that era. Otherwise, I'm just watching another movie that could have taken place in 2025. So yeah, this was awful. Way too many awful things in this movie. So I gave this 1.5 out of 5 stars. And then I watched another Charlie Brown special, and it's the last one of this month, and it's What Have We Learned, Charlie Brown. I forgot to write the year this came out in, but it's either the 70s or the 80s. And this is about Charlie Brown, Linus, Peppermint Patty, Marcy, and Snoopy coming home from studying abroad, and while they're driving through France, they are passing by World War I and World War II memorials. I did watch this on Memorial Day. If you're not from the United States, Memorial Day is when we celebrate our veterans who have passed during a war. So that's what this is a tribute for. It's very somber, which kind of took me off guard. I've never seen really a somber Charlie Brown special. And I will say this felt more so like a dedication than it did a story. There's not much Peanuts shenanigans. It really is just Linus standing there while he's having like flashbacks, so to speak, of wars, but they're not animated. Like, we're watching actual footage of D-Day, so we're watching real life people. And it's a lot of that with in between scenes of Linus explaining these things to Charlie Brown and co. Well, I do think this could be educational for young kids. It just didn't feel like a Charlie Brown special to really no fault of its own. One of the reasons this doesn't feel like a Charlie Brown special is just because it doesn't have the typical gags, except for maybe here and there. It's just the gags aren't really prominent. So, but I also can't fault it too much because I don't think it would be appropriate given the subject matter. But like at the same time, the short made me realize that like those gags are needed to feel like Charlie Brown. So I have complicated feelings about that, but I do want to say Linus has the most hard-hitting lines sometimes. You have this where he says the title, and it was just the way he said it. He drops the line, there's no music. He's very soft-spoken when he says it. I gave this short 3 out of 5 stars. Then I watched my last Wes Anderson film of the month, and it was the last one on my list, and that is The French Dispatch. This is about an American magazine that's based in France, and they are releasing their last issue. So, technical stuff. I am not going to repeat myself. His movies do feel the same when it comes to that. I will say this is not as bright as the Grand Budapest Hotel. But when it comes to the story itself, I actually liked this surprisingly. A lot of people online seem to not like it because it doesn't focus on a single character. But I actually really like that this felt like an anthology series. Each writer for the magazine has their own segment, and each segment is the story. And none of the stories relate to each other. They're only connected by being in the same magazine. So it's kind of like you're watching multiple short films in one. And I will say, good job on the pacing in this movie because each story is just the right length. Right as I was getting antsy, that's when the story would end and that we would move on to the next one. So it was great for my attention span. And it actually, oddly enough, helped me connect to the characters more. Like, the characters just had their one thing to say, they said it and it was very poignant. They made every moment count, and I really liked watching all of them. It's a short and sweet review. That's really all I have to say about this film. It is one of his better ones in my opinion. I gave this 4 out of 5 stars. Then with only 2 days left in May, I went to the theaters to see the last movie I watched in the month of May, and that is Bring Her Back. This is from the same duo that made the horror movie Talk to Me, and this is also a horror movie. This is about a brother and sister whose father has died, so they move into a foster home, and they have a new sibling and a secret awaits. You know what? This movie was an emotional roller coaster. I kind of don't know where to begin, so excuse me if this review is convoluted and just all over the place, but I will start with the beginning. That opening scene is fucked. It is grimy. They kind of use like found footage for it. It's just disturbing what you're watching. You're watching people just die, just these brutal deaths. And it's gritty, it's grimy, and you just know something is wrong. And yet nothing could have prepared me for what exactly is wrong. That's the one thing about this movie I'm going to say right away. That synopsis I gave you sounds so generic and like it's going to be like any other movie, and yet they still managed to make this one stand out and be in a league of its own. And I also love the atmosphere of this movie. There's not a lot of intense music. A lot of it is just the natural sounds around you and watching how people interact with each other. Because once the foster family is introduced, you immediately know something is off, because we have Sally Hawkins who plays the mom, and then we have the little brother, and the little brother is mute and he is just staring at them, and he has this angry look, and he doesn't really listen to Sally Hawkins. She kind of has to beg him a lot, and Sally Hawkins is very exuberant to the point that where I personally, if I were to walk into this house, I'd be like, there is no reason for you to be this happy. What could possibly be this funny? And the sister really enjoyed that, but the brother was, me and the brother, we were on the same page, like, what is going on? You're way too familiar with us. And then from then on, at no point could I ever guess how this movie was gonna unravel. Every time I thought I figured out something in this movie, like the tiniest detail would just throw it off. And when it comes to tropes and stuff, it actually subverted my expectations. When it comes to horror movies, I feel like it's typically the female character that gets gaslit, but in this one, it's actually the brother. So that sexist trope got flipped. I want to talk about the acting in this movie because that's really what, it's always a great actor that truly pulls you when it makes you feel like you're watching just real characters. Sally Hawkins put on an amazing performance as expected. She's a pretty decorated actress. Like, her feelings were palpable. You could cut that shit with a knife. But I also want to give a shout out to the child actors in this movie, because all 3 of them did what needed to be done. Everyone in this movie felt pain in some way, and it was so... It goes back to me saying Sally Hawkins was palpable. Like, it was just so tangible. My heart was physically hurting watching this movie. And then I also want to talk about the imagery in this movie, because I feel like it's a big thing, especially for me, the certain scenes that grabbed my attention. I wouldn't consider this body horror as a whole, but it does the same thing that Talk to Me does. The very few scenes where there is body horror, they really lean into it. It gets really violent, it gets bloody, and I had to look away. But I feel like, usually I hate body horror, but I feel like when a movie does that, when it perfectly balances like that, they only lean into it in certain scenes, it actually makes for a better film, a better story, because that's how you realize how fucked up the situation is. And when it comes to this movie specifically, I had to look away a few times because I don't know what it is about these directors, but they really love having young child male actors bash their faces into something. And like with all horror movies, there often is an underlying commentary. And in this one, there's one very obvious one, but there's one that I'm not sure is purposeful if I was looking a little too deep into it. Part of me is wondering if this is commentary on the foster system. One is just because of how the boys in this are treated. Sally Hawkins is much more welcoming to the daughter, while the boys often get sidelined. But another thing I noticed in this, it's such a small detail, but none of the characters in this, the brother and sister at least, they don't have real doors to their room. First of all, the brother doesn't even have a real room. He's kind of relegated to a storage closet, and his door is a sliding one, but it's like a piece of plastic that doesn't close all the way, so he doesn't get proper privacy. And the sister, who Sally Hawkins presumably loves even more, she doesn't have any type of covering. It's just those door frame beads from like the 90s or whatever. The brother can at least attempt privacy, but she can't at all. And obviously that does come into play later in the movie, but it's like, it's one of the first details I noticed. And I do want to say I did catch on to the most obvious commentary, and that is a mother's grief. I don't want to get too deep into that because it is major spoiler territory, but like I said earlier in this review, that pain is palpable. The ending to this movie, which was great, first of all, was just such a wild ride for me because I didn't know if I should breathe, if I should try to calm down my heart, because that was the thing. By the end of this movie, I was both incredibly stressed out but also incredibly heartbroken. And part of it was just because of the imagery of the ending, because one thing I forgot to mention is just the still shots. There's a lot of amazing, gruesome still shots in this, and the ending frame is one of them. Like it sent chills, what I was looking at just sent chills up my spine, and there was just such a sense of love and heartbreak in that scene. But like when it comes to the heartbreak I felt, it's a very disturbing sense of heartbreak, and that's because who I felt it for wasn't a very good person. So did they deserve my sympathy? No, absolutely not, especially because of after this, how this movie unraveled itself. But like, you can't help it just because of the way it was visualized. So it's definitely one of those movies, when the credits started rolling, I kind of needed to sit there for a couple minutes to calm down, gather my thoughts, and I think that's why this movie is one of like the best movies I watched so far this year, because I had a lot of visceral feelings watching this. So I highly recommend this. If you'd like Talk to Me, I really do hope you like this one. I haven't seen a lot of people talk about this movie, but I'm trying to spread the word everywhere I can and recommend it to my horror friends. I gave this movie 4.5 out of 5 stars. Let's move on to the TV shows. So in the month of May, I watched 3 TV shows, one of which I completed, and I'm going to talk about that one first, and that is The Last of Us. So this show is based on the video game, and in the original video game, the world is coming to an end because of a zombie apocalypse, essentially. They get infected with some kind of fungus, and the last of the humans are living in these confines, and Joel has to take a girl named Ellie to whatever city it was because she could possibly be a cure for humanity. So I hadn't seen this show prior to this year, so I did watch both season 1 and season 2 this year. Season 1 I actually surprisingly enjoyed, just because, I say surprisingly because zombie apocalypse stories aren't really my thing, but I watched this because of FOMO. What I really liked about it was Joel, and I can't say his name, oh my goodness, and Ellie's interaction. Because one of my favorite tropes is a grumpy older guy essentially adopting a kid that's not theirs, especially when it's father-daughter, and that's what this was. And that conundrum Joel was in, I can't say his name, Joel was in at the end of season 1. Like, it pains you, because what choice would you make if you were in it, right? And then season 2, so season 1's about the first game, season 2 is about the sequel game. And I was admittedly not a fan of this. I did not realize how much of my enjoyment of the show hinged on Ellie and Joel until this season, because they don't have a lot of interactions in this. After episode 2, episodes 3, 4, and 5, and honestly 6 and 7, the rest of the season, it felt like a chore. I actually wanted to drop the show after episode 2, but I felt like I had to finish the season. And I don't regret it because I really did love episode 6, but I loved episode 6 because it was Ellie and Joel interacting. And Pedro Pascal's face during the porch scene broke my fucking heart. Talk about an actor. And just seeing how much he loved Ellie, like he truly thought of her as a daughter, and I'm just such a sucker for that trope. But again, and every other episode of this season, though, we don't see that. And I don't mind Ellie. I don't hate her as much as some of these bitch-ass people seem to do online. It's unhinged. The Last of Us 2 subreddit, it used to come up because of the algorithm. That place is unhinged, the way they talk about Bella Ramsey. But I already spoke my piece about that in the last wrap-up. I don't mind Ellie as a character. I had a problem with Dina. I don't really know why. Like, she's not a bad person, but like nothing about her stood out to me, so I didn't connect with her. And the acting in this, minus Pedro Pascal, actually seemed kind of off in this. I don't know if it's a writing issue or what, but I do feel like Bella Ramsey's did kind of decline. But I do want to say, this like also goes for Kaitlyn Dever. I didn't think she was a good actress in this either. And I said what I said. She's the main antagonist in this season, yet I didn't feel threatened by her at all. I just wanted her to shut the fuck up. One thing about Ellie that seemed off to me in the final episode is that I feel like she did something that was kind of out of character. But me and my friends do disagree with each other on this. I thought her reaction to what happened was out of character, whereas my friends think it's to push the plot along and actually helps with her characterization, because we're so used to Ellie going balls to the wall with stuff, so seeing her freeze up like that, like that's her turning point and she's going to change things. But I still really just don't know if I agree with that or not. If you've seen The Last of Us, let me know what you think, because apparently this causes a point of contention. I don't know. I was disappointed with season 2. Oh, it also just feels like they're dragging it out. There are sometimes things where you could tell they are adaptations or something. And like I said, season 1 was the first game. And I went into the season knowing it was the second game and having already read the article about how they're separating the second game into multiple seasons. And it definitely feels like that. It's very slow paced. I always feel like nothing is going on until the big major scene of every episode. But everything before and after that, it just feels like nothing is going on. There's no reason. Everything we saw this season, there's no reason this should be 7 episodes. They could have made it maybe 5. I was very disappointed with season 2. So given all of that, and just the fact that the trope I went into this story for is no longer the trope that's being used, I really don't think I'm going to be continuing with this. If they never make season 3, then like whatever, I'm not looking forward to it. But the next show I want to talk about is Fruits Basket. I started this a while ago just because I made a bet with my friend. If she watches Attack on Titan, I will watch this. But this is about a girl named Toru who meets the Soma family, and 13 people in the Soma family can turn into the Zodiac animals. So as of filming this, I am almost done with season 2. I actually only have 4 episodes left, and it's 3 seasons total. I do want to save some things for the final wrap up, so I don't want to get into too much detail. I will say this is typically not my thing. So this can actually, for my personal taste, this story could get very corny and melodramatic to the point I'm laughing when I'm not supposed to. But then it does also have its cute moments. But there are certain episodes of this show where if it starts to get intense, it does get really intense. Because there was an arc there where I was ready to fight Akito myself. So hopefully by either June's wrap up or July's, I will have finished this show. And then of course the other show I'm watching is still The Golden Girls. This is about 4 old women who are all roommates, and it's a sitcom, so there's no continuity. It's just their lives. I'm on season 5, and I can see there actually is more character development. I read somewhere season 5 is when they got new writers, and I was cheering for Rose because she was actually sticking up for herself. One of my gripes of the series is that Dorothy, and everyone, not just Dorothy, all of them could be a little too mean to Rose sometimes. Like, most of the time it is funny, but there have been a few scenes where I was like, that's a little too much, that's not that funny. And this was actually one of those scenes, and it just worked out perfectly, Rose sticking up for herself. But then it was also funny because she felt bad for it. She left the room, she stormed out of the room, came back, asked if that was too much, and I as a Midwesterner, I was laughing because that's one of the most Midwestern things I've ever seen in a sitcom. And I will say this season, I'm only 4 episodes into it, and it has already gotten me to cry because there was a little crisis with Dorothy where they all thought she was dying. Obviously she's okay, but they all thought she was dying, and Sophia, who's usually kind of the crass character, she's never serious, she was serious in this, and it was heartbreaking. So I'm excited to watch more of this show too. So that's it. That's the video. This took me forever to film. You guys have no idea. I feel like I'm losing my mind. I had to stop halfway through filming. I'm so sorry if you guys made it this far and the first half of this feels totally different than the last half. I spent the first half with a migraine thinking I was drinking too much sugar. I took a break because my battery died. I ate dinner and then discovered I had a migraine because I was hungry the entire time. So I feel much better in the last half of this video. So eat your meals, eat some healthy meals, drink water. I was drinking pop all day. That's my problem. I had Sprite this morning and now I'm drinking a cherry Pepsi. So eat your veggies, eat your fruits, eat your protein, and drink some water. But let me know your thoughts down below. If you like this video, give me a big thumbs up, comment, subscribe. Y'all know the drill. And without further ado, I'm gonna peace out and I'll see you guys later. Ciao, tutti.